Welcome back, viewers. You're watching Beyond World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shivan Jonna.
And I am Hem Kaur Soran. On the show today, amid perhaps the biggest escalation in the Russia-Ukraine war so far, Russian border region of Kursk has declared a state of emergency. This in light of the ongoing Ukrainian attack. What does that entail? The details are not yet known, but we will get you all the updates on this on the show.
Also on the show, after the heartbreaking disqualification from the Paris Games 2024, Vinesh Phogat has announced her retirement from the sport. And this after she was disqualified just as she stood on the cusp of gold in the women's 50 kg freestyle wrestling event before exceeding her weight by just about 100 grams. We are going to be tracking all those developments coming in from Paris as well. Let's get started with that.
India's Vinesh Phogat announces retirement from wrestling in an emotional social media post. The 29-year-old says her courage is broken after disqualification from the 50 kg wrestling gold medal match.
Russia battles a major cross-border raid from Ukraine for a second day. The most serious attack on Russian territory by Kiev's forces in months. A local state of emergency is introduced in Russia's Kursk region.
Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian urges the country's supreme leader to avoid a direct attack on Israel. Warns an escalation could lead Israel to devastate infrastructure and energy targets and cripple the economy.
Organization of Islamic Cooperation says Israel is fully responsible for the heinous killing of Hamas political leader Ismail Haniyeh in Iran. Warns it could destabilize the region.
In an interview to CBS, US President Joe Biden warns that he is not confident at all of a peaceful handover of power to Kamala Harris if Donald Trump loses November's election.
Thousands of anti-racism protesters take to the streets in several English cities to oppose days of far-right violence that have UK police on high alert.
An interim government headed by Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus will take oath in Bangladesh today. Advisory team may include 15 members.
Bangladesh's garment factories reopen after a week-long shutdown caused by violent protests. Factories are racing to recover and meet critical shipment deadlines for major brands like H&M and Zara.
Three shows in Vienna by American megastar Taylor Swift have been cancelled after Austria arrests a man in connection with an Islamist attack plot. All right, India's Vinesh Phogat has announced her retirement from the sport of wrestling.
Of course, it was a rather emotional social media post. The 29-year-old revealed that she feels defeated and her courage is shattered.
Now, this announcement comes just a day after she was disqualified from the 50 kg wrestling gold medal match. Phogat took to social media platform X in the early hours of Thursday morning and said, "Mother wrestling, you've beaten me. I lost. Forgive me. My dreams are shattered. My courage is broken. I don't have any more strength now."
Phogat was disqualified on Wednesday, just hours before her final. The 29-year-old beat the likes of reigning Olympic and world number 1 Yue Sasaki of Japan to become the first Indian woman to reach the gold medal match at the Olympic Games. However, after her semi-final bout, she found out that she had gained weight. Her weight was around 52 kgs, well above the limit. The 29-year-old spent the entire night trying to reach the 50 kg mark. She ran, cycled the whole night and even hit the sauna. Such was her state that there was no sweat coming from her as she did not consume water.
Now, it got to a point where her body almost broke down when she was taken for the weigh-in on Wednesday morning. Her weight was 50.1 kg, 100 grams over the limit. That meant she had lost almost 2 kgs over the course of the night. In a last-ditch effort, her team cut her hair, but to no avail. The chief doctor of the Indian contingent stated that any more exertion could have endangered her life. Phogat was taken to the clinic in the Olympic Village for a checkup and was put on intravenous fluids to hydrate. She was released late on Wednesday.
Phogat's retirement announcement came as everyone was awaiting a verdict from the Court of Arbitration for Sport, or the CAS.
Now, 29-year-old Phogat had approached CAS seeking relief and a shared silver medal with a decision expected today. Sports editor Disqualification broke this story last evening and will guide us through the procedure and what to expect. Listen to this.
It has been a day of high drama here in Paris. Vinesh Phogat's disqualification from the women's 50 kg freestyle event came as a huge shock to everyone. But later in the evening, news emerged that this story is not over. WION broke the story that Vinesh had filed an appeal with the Court of Arbitration for Sport, or CAS. Now, CAS is the body that has the power to overturn the disqualification that happened against Vinesh in the women's 50 kg for being just 100 grams overweight. We are being told that there's been massive talks going on behind the scenes. We're also told by sources in the Indian contingent that Prime Minister Narendra Modi called PT Usha, the president of the Indian Olympic Association, at least thrice this morning. The exact nature of those conversations are not known. But at 5:51 p.m. Paris time, Vinesh Phogat filed an appeal with the interim body of CAS, which is here during the Olympic Games. Vinesh initially asked that should be allowed to compete in the final, the gold medal match. There was a reply from CAS after that saying this is not possible as the match has already been sanctioned. Guzman from Cuba, who she beat, had been elevated to that gold medal match against the American wrestler. After that, a second mail was sent, a second modified appeal was sent, which said, allow me to at least share the silver medal. There was another reply from CAS saying, we will consider your case and we will inform you in the morning. We are now waiting to see if Vinesh Phogat gets her dream, if Vinesh Phogat is able to convince the Court of Arbitration for Sport that there was injustice done against her. I have spoken to senior officials in world sport and they are not too optimistic. They say that CAS will go by the rules, and the rules of world wrestling say that if you miss your way in, you will not be allowed to compete. We still don't know how this is going to pan out, but there is some glimmer of hope still there for Vinesh Phogat at the moment. In Paris, this is Disqualification for WION.
Amid an ongoing Ukrainian cross-border attack, Russian border region Kursk, it has announced a state of emergency. The acting governor of Kursk, Alexei Smirnov, announced emergency via telegram.
Right, without elaborating on what the measures would be, reports suggest that intense battle is ongoing along the borders. Ukrainian forces have pushed to the northwest of the border town of Sudza. the last operational trans-shipping point of Russian natural gas to Europe. The chief of Russia's general staff, Valery Gerasimov, told Putin that Russian forces have halted a thrust by up to 1,000 Ukrainian soldiers, more than 3 times the figure that Russia's defense ministry had stated.
Now, according to Gerasimov, the advance was stopped by the actions of the units covering the state's border, together with border guards and reinforcement units, with airstrikes, missiles and artillery fire. A claim refuted by Ukraine, which said that the Russian units made no headway and in fact suffered significant losses.
Meanwhile, the United States said it was seeking an understanding from Ukraine of the attack, claiming that it had no advance knowledge of it. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said that rules on Ukrainian use of weapons, U.S. weapons, authorized in areas over the Russian border remained in effect. However, it cleared that the ongoing Ukrainian actions against Russia are not in violation of those rules.
War cabinet, someone with whom the Secretary has engaged in his visits to Israel, someone with whom the Secretary has had one-on-one phone calls.
All right, for more on this, we're now being joined live from Italy by Peter Kuznick, Director of Nuclear Studies, Institute of American University. Sir, thank you so much for joining us on World DNA. Sir, Zelensky has made no reference to the attack. Even Ukraine's general staff has not acknowledged the attack. Is this a new stealth strategy? How do you assess this?
It doesn't make very much sense. I think everybody is scratching their heads and wondering, why is Ukraine doing this? What do they hope to accomplish? They are undermanned and outgunned in eastern Ukraine, fighting against the Russians. They need more reinforcements there. Why they are doing this, it could be to divert Russian troops away from the east, to have to fight to protect the border, or it could be for psychological reasons, that they haven't had any victories to claim for quite some time, and to show that they still have the capability to surprise Russia and to actually penetrate Russia. Maybe that's going to raise morale. But in terms of the long-run impact of what's going on in this war, this is not going to change anything. The other possibility is that they want to seize some of those oil pipelines. Now, that's a possibility. There's also a nuclear facility, but Russia has reinforced that. Both sides are claiming that the other side is suffering heavy casualties, but we don't know yet. It's too early to know what's really happening.
Mr. Kuznick, as you mentioned, everyone's scratching their heads at what Ukraine is really planning. And of course, there is no acknowledgement of it yet. I also wanted to understand from you, would you consider this as a possible reason? Now, it's a well-known fact by now that Zelensky and essentially Ukraine is extremely concerned about the prospects of Trump coming to power in the US. And we're just about 3 months out from the elections. Trump has made it clear that he will ensure that the war is off as if he comes to power. Do you feel that could be propelling Ukraine to carry out an attack like this to perhaps gain maximum bargaining power before it's called off, as Trump has claimed he would?
I don't see how this is going to improve Ukraine's bargaining position. The Russians are going to send in their troops. They're going to send in their planes. They're going to drive the Ukrainians out, and they're going to, I assume, kill or capture most of the invaders. It's going to be seen, I'm afraid, as folly on the part of Zelensky and the Ukrainian leadership, a desperation move. And they are in a pretty desperate situation now. The sentiment in the United States is 2-1 in favor of a ceasefire and negotiations. So regardless if it's Harris and Walz in power or Trump and Vance, I think that this war's days are limited. They're numbered. And we've seen diplomatic efforts by Modi, by Xi Jinping, by Lula, by the Pope, by Guterres. I think the world has seen that Ukraine is not going to win, and that they're not going to drive the Russian forces out of the areas where they are now, and they're going to lose a little bit more ground. And so eventually they're going to have to sit down and negotiate, but they'll be in weaker position. I don't see how this can succeed.
You make some very pertinent points there, Mr. Kuznik. You don't see how this is going to help them, regardless of who comes to power in the US. It seems like the numbers for the number of days for the war are, of course, just on a backward count from here. Thank you so much for joining. That was Mr. Peter Kuznik, Director of Nuclear Studies Institute at American University, joining us from Italy.
Thank you.
All right. After a week of rioting and disorder in the United Kingdom, thousands of protesters rallied in cities and towns across England.
Now, in London, Bristol, Newcastle, where anti-immigration protests had been expected, counter-protesters held banners that read "Fight Racism, Stop the Far Right." They chanted, "Refugees are welcome here." This amid massive deployment of police in anticipation of further violence.
As posts online had warned that the far-right anti-Muslim protesters would target a list of immigration centres, migrant support centres and specialist law firms. This had prompted many businesses to close early and some shops to board up windows as well.
However, the protests largely passed off peacefully with only a handful of arrests made. In total, more than 400 arrests have been made in relation to the riots, sparked by misinformation online that the suspect in the fatal stabbing of 3 girls in Southport on July 29th was a Muslim asylum seeker. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian has urged the country's supreme leader to avoid a direct attack on Israel. According to reports, Pezeshkian has warned that an escalation could lead Israel to devastate infrastructure and energy targets in Iran
and cripple the economy. Reports suggest that Pezeshkian told Khamenei that a war could deepen citizens' discontent with the regime and even bring about Iran's collapse. The report says Khamenei was non-committal at the meeting. Pezeshkian further warned against the rhetoric and actions of senior military commanders that could drag the country into war. IRGC Chief Commander Hossein Salami had earlier said that Israel will learn a lesson once it receives Iran's severe response.
Meanwhile, top Muslim diplomats of the Saudi-based Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC, have held Israel fully responsible for the heinous killing of Hamas political leader Ismail Haniyeh. Heinous, of course, is a word that they've used for the killing. The Islamic bloc warned that Haniyeh's killing could destabilize the region. The declaration came at the end of an extraordinary meeting called in part by Iran, which has vowed to retaliate for the attack on Haniyeh, setting West Asia on edge.
Amid growing fears of a possible broader conflict, Britain and Egypt have asked their airlines to avoid Iranian and Lebanese airspace. Britain's advisory to its airlines to avoid Lebanon's airspace came hours after Egypt instructed all of its airlines to avoid Iran's airspace for 3 hours in early morning on Thursday. Many airlines globally are raising their schedules to avoid Iranian and Lebanese airspace while also calling off flights to Israel and Lebanon entirely.
Reports suggest that Lebanon-based Hezbollah is preparing to attack Israel independent of an Iranian response. According to reports, the militant group is moving at a faster pace than Iran in readying an attack. Meanwhile, Israel has again vowed to eliminate new Hamas chief Yahya Sinwar, the alleged mastermind of the October 7th attack, with regional tensions threatening to boil over as the Gaza war enters its 11th month.
Army Chief Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi vowed to find Sinwar, attack him and force Hamas to find another leader. Speaking at a military base on Wednesday, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel is determined to defend itself. All right, Vice President Kamala Harris has declared herself and her new running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, as joyful warriors against Donald Trump.
And of course, this as they spent their first full day campaigning together across the Midwest. The duo got a glimpse of how hotly contested the region will be when they overlapped on a Wisconsin tarmac. With Republican vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance, the Democrats rallied in Wisconsin and Michigan, hoping to get support from the younger, diverse, labor-friendly voters who played a great role in helping President Joe Biden win the 2020 election.
Understand, in this fight, as Tim Walz likes to point out, we are joyful warriors. Joyful warriors. Because we know that while fighting for a brighter future may be hard work is good work. Hard work is good work.
The Harris campaign said it had raised $36 million in the first 24 hours after she announced Walz as her running mate. Walz did not shy away from attacking Trump.
We don't shy away from challenges, but I'll tell you what, Donald Trump, he sees the world differently than we see it. He has no understanding of service because he's too busy servicing himself. Again and again and again. Again and again and again. This guy weakens our country to strengthen his own hands. He mocks our laws. He sows chaos and division amongst the people. And that's to say nothing of the job he did as president.
Trump too has put emphasis on appealing to voters in these Midwestern states, especially with his choice of J.D. Vance, an Ohio Republican senator, as his running mate. Vance was even bracketing the Harris-Walz ticket with Michigan and Wisconsin appearances of his own on the same day. Kamala Harris came almost face-to-face when they both landed in Wisconsin.
We actually just saw the vice president's plane on the tarmac. We landed about the same time that she did. And I went over there because I thought it might be nice to check out this plane that's going to be mine in a few months if we all take care of business. So if they want to call me weird, look, I've got my wife here. I've got 3 beautiful kids at home. I'm a normal guy who wants to live the American dream and wants all of you and your kids to be able to live the American dream. That's why I'm in it. If those people want to call me weird, I think it's a badge of honor.
Republicans seem to be trying to portray Harris and Walz as too liberal for the Midwest. Vance held Harris responsible for President Joe Biden's economic and border policies, at one point referring to the government as the Harris administration.
We have to be self-sufficient as a people, and if we're not self-sufficient, then it's going to allow the communist Chinese to run all over us, and that's exactly what they've been doing under the Harris administration.
Meanwhile, President Joe Biden said that he is not confident Donald Trump would concede peacefully if he loses the U.S. election. And this, as Harris warned, a Trump victory would usher in lawless administration set to curtailing America's freedoms. During a March campaign appearance in Ohio, Trump warned of a bloodbath if he fails to win the election. At the time, Trump was discussing the need to protect the U.S. auto industry from overseas competition. And Trump later said he was referring to the auto industry when he used that term.
Kamala Harris has a lot to cheer about. As many as 13 national polls conducted till last week showed her racing ahead of her Republican candidate and opponent Donald Trump. Now, the polls show Harris with a 1 to 5 point lead. with respondents were asked about their voting intentions. But the popular vote only goes so far. It will not determine the election's outcome. Under the electoral college system, Trump could win in November despite getting fewer votes than Harris, as he did against Hillary Clinton in 2016. Now, a Survey USA poll asked 1,510 likely voters between August 2nd and August 4th whom they would vote for. And it found that Harris ahead with 48% of the vote to Trump's 45%. And other candidates had 3% to 4% were undecided. Now, over the same period, Morning Consult surveyed 11,265 some registered voters. 48% said they would vote for Harris, while it was 44% for Trump. She's mostly leading in all these polls. And Issues and Insights TIPP survey showed Harris with a 1-point lead against Trump, 46% to 45%. And between July 30th and August 2nd, YouGov polled 3,100 likely voters for CBS News, and its survey showed that Harris was again leading by 1 point, with 50% saying she was their preferred choice for president against 49% for Trump. Now, however, in battleground states, the poll found Harris and Trump tied with 50% of the vote each, again making these states pivotal for the upcoming election. A University of Massachusetts Amherst survey showed Harris with 43% vote against 40% for Donald Trump. Now, a poll of 3,000 registered voters conducted by RMG Research between July 29th and 31st showed Harris with a 5-point lead over Trump, 47% to 42%. Civics surveyed 1,100 registered voters between July 27th and July 30th. It puts Harris ahead by 4 points, 49% to Trump's 45%. A Legger poll of 1,000 U.S. residents between July 26th and 28th showed Harris with 49% of the vote against Trump's 46%. 4 other national polls showed Harris with a 2-point lead over Trump. Of course, in most of these polls, we've seen Kamala Harris leading Donald Trump, no matter how late her campaigning has started, but she definitely seems to have made up for the lost time. We are going to be tracking that closely right here on World DNA, as we have been doing so far. As of now, let's slip into a short break. On the other side, of course, this is World DNA. We will be back. Lots more planned. On the other side, Bangladesh's garment factories reopen after a week-long closure caused by violent protests. The unrest, which led to the resignation and flight of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, resulted in significant production halts.
India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
sich nur als imposant.
Welcome back to World DNA. Thank you so much for staying with us. Lots lined up for you on this side of the show as well. Let's get started with the headlines first.
India's Vinesh Phogat announces retirement from wrestling in an emotional social media post. The 29-year-old says her courage is broken after disqualification from the 50 kg wrestling gold medal match.
Russia battles a major cross-border raid from Ukraine for a second day, the most serious attack on Russian territory by Kyiv's forces in months. A local state of emergency introduced in Russia's Kursk region.
Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian urges the country's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei to avoid a direct attack on Israel. Warns an escalation could lead Israel to devastate infrastructure and energy targets and cripple the Iranian economy.
Organization of Islamic Cooperation says Israel is fully responsible for the heinous killing of Hamas political leader Ismail Haniyeh in Iran, warns it could destabilize the region.
In an interview to CBS, US President Joe Biden warns that he is not confident at all of a peaceful handover of power to Kamala Harris if Donald Trump loses November's election.
Thousands of anti-racism protesters take to the streets in several English cities to oppose days of far-right violence that have UK police on high alert.
An interim government headed by Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus will take oath in Bangladesh today. Advisory team may include 15 members.
Bangladesh's garment factories reopen after a week-long shutdown caused by the violent protests. Factories are racing to recover and meet critical shipment deadlines for major brands like H&M and Zara.
Three shows in Vienna by American megastar Taylor Swift have been cancelled after Austria arrests a man in connection with an Islamist attack plot.
India's Vinesh Phogat has announced her retirement from the sport of wrestling in an emotional social media post.
Well, the 29-year-old revealed that she feels defeated and her courage is shattered. The announcement comes just a day after she was disqualified from the 50 kg wrestling gold medal match. Phogat took to social media platform X in the early hours of Thursday morning and said this: "Mother wrestling, you have beaten me. I lost. Forgive me. My dreams are shattered. My courage is broken. I don't have any more strength now."
Phogat was disqualified on Wednesday, just hours before the final. The 29-year-old beat the likes of reigning Olympic and world #1 Yui Susaki of Japan to become the first Indian woman to reach the gold medal match at the Olympic Games. However, after her semi-final bout, she found out that she had gained weight. Her weight was around 52 kgs, well above the limit, and the 29-year-old spent the entire night trying to reach the 50 kg mark. She ran, she cycled the entire night, she even hit the sauna. Such was her state that there was no sweat coming from her as she did not consume any water, and it got to a point where her body almost broke down.
When she was taken for the weigh-in on Wednesday morning, her weight was 50.1 kilograms, 100 grams over the limit, and that meant she had lost almost 2 kgs over the course of the night. In a last-ditch effort, her team cut her hair as well, but to no avail. The chief doctor of the Indian contingent, Dr. Dinshaw Pardiwala, stated that any more exertion would have endangered Phogat's life. Phogat was taken to the clinic in the Olympic Village for a checkup and was put on intravenous fluids immediately to hydrate. She was released late on Wednesday.
A two-time Olympian, Vinesh has 3 Commonwealth Games golds, 2 World Championship bronze medals and 1 Asian Games gold medal to her name. She was also crowned Asian champion in 2021.
Phogat's retirement announcement came as everyone was awaiting a verdict from the Court of Arbitration for Sport, commonly known as CAS. 29-year-old Phogat had approached CAS seeking relief and a shared silver medal.
With the decision expected today, our sports editor Digvijay Singh Deo broke this story last evening and will also guide us through the procedure and what to expect. Listen to this.
It has been a day of high drama here in Paris. Vinesh Phogat's disqualification from the women's 50 kg freestyle event came as a huge shock to everyone. But later in the evening, news emerged that this story is not over. WION broke the story that Vinesh had filed an appeal with the Court of Arbitration for Sport, or CAS. Now, CAS is the body that has the power to overturn the disqualification that happened against Vinesh in the women's 50 kg for being just 100 grams overweight. We are being told that there's been massive talks going on behind the scenes. We're also told by sources in the Indian contingent that Prime Minister Narendra Modi called PT Usha, the president of the Indian Olympic Association, at least thrice this morning. The exact nature of those conversations are not known. But at 5:51 p.m. Paris time, Vinesh Phogat filed an appeal with the interim body of CAS, which is here during the Olympic Games. Vinesh initially asked that she'd be allowed to compete in the final, the gold medal match. There was a reply from CAS after that saying this is not possible as the match has already been sanctioned. Guzman from Cuba, who she beat, had been elevated to that gold medal match against the American wrestler. After that, a second mail was sent, a second modified appeal was sent, which said, allow me to at least share the silver medal. There was another reply from CAS saying, we will consider your case and we will inform you in the morning. We are now waiting to see if Vinesh Phogat gets her dream, if Vinesh Phogat is able to convince the Court of Arbitration for Sport that there was injustice done against her. I have spoken to senior officials in world sport and they are not too optimistic. They say that CAS will go by the rules. And the rules of World Wrestling say that if you miss your way in, you will not be allowed to compete. We still don't know how this is going to pan out, but there is some glimmer of hope still there for Vinesh Phogat at the moment. In Paris, this is Digvijay Singhdeo for WION.
Well, for the 10th day now, rescue and relief operations are underway in the landslide-hit villages of Wayanad, Kerala, while the obvious focus of the multi-agency rescue operation has remained on rescuing victims and recovering the mortal remains of those who haven't made it.
Now, there is a lesser-known effort that's underway here, caring for the animals that have also been affected just as badly by this immeasurable tragedy. After daybreak on the 30th of July, Tuesday, as the rescue operations by the National Disaster Response Force, the NDRF, and Kerala state authorities commenced, a team of volunteers focused on animal rescue started work in the affected villages. Our principal correspondent, Siddharth MP, spoke to a volunteer from the Humane Society International, and this is what he said. I'm going to quote here. Wherever a disaster strikes, the authorities arrange shelters where the survivors and dislocated and displaced people can be accommodated temporarily. However, there are no such designated shelters for animals. Our task is to rescue the animals, move them to a safe location, offer them medical relief and food. So far, we have been able to provide aid to 90 cattle, 22 dogs, 7 cats and more than 50 owls.
In the aftermath of the disaster, animals are under serious distress owing to multiple factors. It could be the massive activity around them, the huge mobilization of people, the noisy environment of the rescue and relief efforts. Under such circumstances, there are several cases where animals don't feed on their own or accept food. They may have even sustained injuries.
A bloodbath in Indian markets from the global stock slump has not displaced the country's reign among Asian peers.
Now, the pace of India's losses and the reversal since Monday's crash is better than other Asian markets. And in the next report, we deep dive into the reasons and the performance here. Take a look.
Indian stocks took a knock in this week's worldwide market downturn on Monday. However, they remain Asia's best performers. The country's benchmarks have outperformed other Asian indices with gains of over 10% this year still intact. In the short term, extreme volatility is expected to weigh on stocks. However, investors project the Sensex and the Nifty indices to recover strongly and return to life highs this year. Both benchmarks are not too far away from their all-time highs, and gains have easily outpaced a few losses by a large margin this year. More importantly, the bull run is driven largely by domestic investors, with foreign flows staying on the sidelines for much of this year so far. India's robust economic growth outlook suggests foreign investors are not too far from jumping into the country's growth story. While Japan has turned into the epicenter of global investors' worries about the practice of carry trade in the yen, India has been largely unaffected. With a mere $20 billion or less than 3% of the world total, India's share in this trade is quite modest. India's financial system has become more robust because of the Reserve Bank of India's stricter regulations. The country's excellent economic performance and large foreign exchange reserves have shielded it from the effects of the yen carry trade reversal. Following Monday's devastating loss, the dollar staged a robust recovery, putting pressure on the rupee in global markets. As it approaches the historically significant 84 per dollar barrier, the Indian rupee keeps sinking farther into record low territory. Despite the central bank limiting the extent of changes using its reserves, the currency is expected to tiptoe to record lows going ahead. Separately, shares of Indian textile manufacturers are supported by the political instability in Bangladesh. That country's massive textile industry may see a decline in business as customers worry about supply delays caused by the ongoing upheaval. Indian manufacturers are expected to fill the void. Stocks of KPR, Mill, Arvind, and Wellspun Living soared on Tuesday. Reason? Investors bet that India will be able to increase its shares of the international garment export market. Business Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Now, Bangladesh's garment factories reopen after a week-long closure that was caused by the violent protests which led to the resignation and flight of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. It resulted in significant production halts.
Now, factories like Urmi Garments reported a loss of approximately $107,000 in production, contributing to an overall loss of $2.2 million across multiple units.
During this ongoing movement, the factories were fully closed for 6 days. We faced huge loss in these days. We lost 228,000 pieces of production and $107,000 in this factory alone.
Now, this disruption comes as Bangladesh, the third largest clothing exporter globally, grapples with the economic fallout of political instability. The shutdowns imposed during curfews affected major factories supplying global brands like H&M and Zara. Factory owners face pressure from retailers to resume production promptly to avoid delays in shipments. In July, August and September being critical months for Christmas and seasonal orders, the industry is racing to recover lost time and meet delivery deadlines now.
Amid the ongoing political turmoil, Bangladesh's garment factories are working to resume normal operations. Many workers who depend on daily wages faced major difficulties to get through the week.
During this moment in clashes, our factory was closed and lost a lot of money. We went out of work, sitting idle at home. We were scared. We are poor people depending on daily wage and overtime. If we sit at home, how can we run our families?
The Bangladeshi Garment Manufacturers and Exporters Association decided to reopen factories to ensure timely shipments and avoid further economic damage. The industry is focused on stabilizing operations and addressing the logistical challenges.
India's luxury car market is experiencing a growth spurt. Sales have skyrocketed, driven by a younger, wealthier clientele.
But what is the future of luxury in India? Will EV luxury cars become mainstream? Take a look at our next report for more on this.
India's luxury car market is revving up. As per data, cumulative sales of 7 luxury car makers in 2024 were over 45,000 units, up 20.5% compared to last year. In terms of market share, Mercedes-Benz tops the list with 37% market share. BMW is slowly closing in with a 32% market share. Audi, Land Rover and Mini are also major players in the market. BMW recently launched its long-wheel Base 5 series model for Indian roads. Mr. Jean-Philippe Parrain, Senior Vice President BMW Group, spoke to WION regarding the company's focus on the Indian market.
India is one of the last very large country with a big potential for premium cars and for BMW. So we are looking at India with a lot of dedication, a lot of attention. We had many visits of our board members in the country to understand better what's happening here. I'm myself very often here. I'm here in July. I will be again in August in the country. So I'm really looking at in detail the trends, the development, the I would say dynamism of the market. And we are trying to take the best decisions in terms of product introduction, investments and everything.
This also comes as major luxury brands beyond automakers are looking to diversify from China amid slowdown. While the country remains the world's largest market, the China Plus One strategy is slowly gaining traction.
The Chinese economy is a bit more under pressure at the moment, that the consumer sentiment is less strong than it has been in the last years. You see that also in the figures from other industry, luxury industry. But China remains the biggest market by far worldwide for BMW. So even if it's a bit more difficult, it remains a very, very important and strong market, just not growing as fast as it used to grow.
On the topic of electrification of cars and the way forward in the luxury segment, Florian Kunstner, Vice President Mini, spoke to WION on his own experience driving electric vehicles.
I think the one challenge I see is that a lot of people talk about it without actually experiencing it. Yeah? So even myself, at the beginning, I was maybe also hesitant, but once you drive an electric car, you actually see that it's a lot of fun.
India's luxury car market, while expanding, still represents a small fraction of the overall automotive market. High import duties and infrastructure challenges are hurdles. However, the potential for growth is immense. With a rising affluent population and evolving consumer preferences, the industry is optimistic. Business Bureau, WION World is One.
Alright, let's now take a look at all the developments from the world of technology. Researchers in Scotland are developing a national quantum network to enhance data security in the UK. Quantum networks function like the internet but use quantum signals for ultra-secure high-speed communication. Led by Heriot-Watt University in Edinburgh, the Integrated Quantum Networks Hub is part of a $203 million UK government initiative. This project aims to strengthen cybersecurity by boosting defenses against hacking and enabling future quantum computer connections. Once developed, quantum computers are expected to be vastly faster than current supercomputers and conventional computers. However, cybersecurity experts know that while a quantum internet would be secure against wiretapping, it wouldn't be able to stop other cyber threats like social engineering or malware.
Elon Musk's social media platform X, formerly known as Twitter, has filed a lawsuit against a global advertising alliance and several major companies including Mars and CVS Health. X has accused them of unlawfully conspiring to boycott the site and causing it to lose revenue. The social media platform filed the lawsuit in a federal court in Texas. The lawsuit said advertisers acting through a World Federation of Advertisers initiative called Global Alliance for Responsible Media collectively withheld billions of dollars in advertising revenue from X. X also accused the advertising alliance of violating the US antitrust law.
According to a report conducted by South Korea's Ministry of Science and ICT, around 57% of South Koreans believe that artificial intelligence could prove to be beneficial rather than dangerous. Only 23% of people believe AI could be both beneficial as well as dangerous, while 90% of the respondents said AI could pose more potential dangers than benefits. Possible damage due to a malfunction is the number one cause of concern for many. Meanwhile, around 55% of the respondents said innovation is more important than regulation to foster safe growth of AI.
It was a starry night in New York City where stars and supporting cast of It Ends With Us gathered to celebrate the upcoming film's premiere. Here's more. Take a look.
think what's beautiful about this story is it's a woman's story, and I think what's impactful is that Lily is not defined by something that someone did to her. She tells her story, so she's not defined by her past, she's not defined by the men in her past or her present, she's defined by who she is. So yes, she is a survivor, and yes, she is a victim, but she's also a business owner, she's also an artist, she's also a friend, she's also a mother, she's also a lover, she's a daughter, she's a woman of multitudes.
I definitely believe what we did from the very beginning is we thought about all of the survivors that could potentially watch this movie. So at the end of the day, this was made for them. So before I ever signed on to officially direct it, I brought on our partners at nomore.org. They're an incredible domestic violence organization, and they helped me develop the script. They helped me develop these scenes, and we talked in detail about how we were going to do this to make sure that we never glorified or romanticized it.
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of World DNA.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Come right back after the break. This is Beyond World is One for all your global updates.
Namaste. Hello, friends. We did Dr. Subhash Chandra show, popularly known as DSC show, for 4 years, from August 2014 to August 2018. 28 states of Bharat. Of course, we reached out to all of you in 190 countries across the world. The show was very successful. Each episode was being watched by almost 25 million people every week. For past 6 years, the demand of the show has never died down. People write to us, people ask for the show to restart again. Hence, we are beginning the show once again on All Z Network, also on WION, which is the global network channel from India. Again, thank you for your love and affection. See you soon at Subhash Chandra Show.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at yoursarthi@such.org.in.
Vielleicht nur als Imposant.
Welcome, you're watching WION World is One. My name is Hem Korsura and here's a look at all the top stories that we're tracking for you right now. Russia battles a major cross-border raid from Ukraine for a second day, the most serious attack on Russian territory by Kyiv's forces in months. A local state of emergency introduced in Russia's Kursk region. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian urges the country's supreme leader to avoid direct attack on Israel, warns an escalation would lead Israel to devastate infrastructure and energy targets and cripple the economy. Organization of Islamic Cooperation says Israel is fully responsible for the heinous killing of Hamas political leader Ismail Haniyeh in Iran, warns it could destabilize the region. In an interview to CBS, US President Joe Biden warns that he is not confident at all of a peaceful handover of power to Kamala Harris if Donald Trump loses November's election. Thousands of